I was just about to remember you.
Yeah. I wonder if I could maybe kickstart the check-in process. I mean, we were going to do this, Annika, but just wanted to hear how everybody was going. But I think you were going to weave in a couple of questions to
Yeah, I will.
get us into the space. So let's start that now. What do you reckon?
Yeah. Um, Maybe we can just have a quick round how everybody arrives. So just 3 words. So for me, it's um, excited, tired, and curious. And I will pass it on to Marcelo.
Mm. Bit with a flu, bit tired, but happy too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Pass to Alex.
Yeah, happy as well, and tired and a bit stressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pass to Andrea.
I'm going through some challenges, so I'm kind of like moving forward. But yes, um, I'll pass it to Pamela. Pam.
I had a challenging day. It was stressful. I'm happy to be home and I'm happy to be here.
Mm. So,
Ash, I
um,
think.
yeah, exactly.
I will jump on board the challenging day train, um, but also happy to be here and shifting into focus.
Yeah,
Mm.
really sounds like yeah, I feel for you all. Like I'm the same. I've been up since 4 a.m. this morning. It's now 7, and meeting with folk in Africa and others, who are in the process of launching amazing programs of activity. And here comes Pacifica. And it's like that, isn't it? I mean, the fuel that keeps us going, even in the presence of stress and all that stuff, is quite amazing. But yeah, g'day Pacifica. We're just kind of checking in. But having heard you all say that, I just feel like I want to, for a moment, just hold each other's good intent, and we can breathe out and we can stop and really breathe in a moment. But I'm a bit like you. I'm actually I've got a colonoscopy tomorrow, so today I'm going to be preparing for it, so that's where I'm at.
And maybe if I see that Pacifico is uh with his son, so maybe we can all take just a deep breath to come here, or maybe Pacifico, could you say 3 words how you arriving here?
Tired and fulfilled. 3 wings.
Great.
Same as all of us. Yeah.
So maybe we just take for 30 seconds just a deep breath to come here. Maybe feel where you're sitting and connecting to the group. Being present in your real and in our virtual space. And Now come please to the group. And we thought it might be a nice round if we all answered the following prompt. I would love to learn more about. And then you say what you would like to learn about. And if we could put this in the chat. So everybody right now, I would love to learn.
Yeah. And any particular questions you have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this in the context of pro-social stuff or like life?
I think in the context of the course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Andrea, I would love to learn more about the way Leading ProSocial is facilitated. Specific goal. I would love to learn more about different techniques and exercises that support different stages of this process. And Pam, the term integral theory was raised last class. I'm not familiar with this. And Alex writes, core design principles, not only assessing a group functioning based on them, but moving on to improve particular domains. And Josh, I would like to learn more about holding a framework of prosocial behavior while being flexible in the present moment to respond without bring my baggage. There is a new answer. Yeah, okay. So, and Marcelo, when difficult conversations come, how to evolve a clear, objective way integrated with compassion. And I would love to learn to facilitate the matrix with big groups and systems. This is what I would really like to learn.
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
do I have you here? No, not yet.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just...
Did you send anything yet? No, you didn't.
I did. Oh no, I sent it to Andrea. So there you go, Andrea.
Oh, then I can't read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, being increasingly present to the needs of those I am with. So we have I think, a big bouquet across the themes of social themes and methods, which is great. And yeah.
I think these are great questions. Just I think hold on to them because after the break we actually go into a Q&A session in which a lot of these could actually feature. So keep them in mind and we can revisit them then.
Yeah. This is great.
And I think
So, yeah.
it just occurred to me we hadn't planned it, Annika. I might just briefly talk about the arc of today's session so people have
Yeah,
a sense.
sure.
And
Go
so
ahead.
before the break, the main activity we'll engage in is having Pacifico and Annika facilitate a session for us on, evolving, engaging in more pro-social conversations. And so that'll be a real bit of learning that they'll endeavour to facilitate for us. And then that'll be followed by us doing a debrief of it. We'll invite both Pacifico and Annika to reflect on their experience, what they felt worked well, what didn't, but also we'll do a round and each of us will actually comment on how we received the session and how it impact that, any suggestions we might have, but with a particular focus on reinforcing good practices in the room, but also any suggestions on how you might do it. And then after the break, we'll start to take a kind of step back and ask ourselves the question, what kind of things are we learning in this space and the practical implications of it, which is where the questions you've asked now will start to feature a bit more. So keep them in mind as we move through. And then toward the end of today's session, we'll just do a brief sort of visit of next week's topic, which is actually about developing psychological flexibility. And I'm not sure who's facilitating that. It's
I can have a look.
yeah.
That's you and me, Robert.
Oh, that's me. Right. Okay.
That's you and me. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. It is. So it'll be an opportunity for us to reflect on how we might be going to approach that. But that's the arc. And yeah, so keep your questions in mind, which as we go through our time together. Yeah, Annika.
Yeah. Maybe would you like to do the check-in you planned? I mean, the coming to the present moment. Would you like to do that, or I would be fine to go on to do the little thing Andrea and I planned?
Well, I'm kind of wondering. We can do it. I mean, who really would benefit from a moment of silence, and just really getting yourself into the space? Or do you want to just keep going? So I didn't catch you, Pacifica.
I'm good with just keep going, but that's just myself.
I second that.
Yeah, okay. So let's keep going. I think we
Yeah.
took a little bit of a breath before, and
Yeah, exactly.
So it's you're on, Annika, with
Yeah, exactly. Last time we talked about our purpose, and Andrea said it was too long for her, and I asked her to refine the purpose. So could you drop it in the chat and maybe read it?
If you want, I can also share it. Do you want me to drop?
That's great.
I can do both.
Have you both?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Andrea.
No problem. So I just feel that that a shorter purpose is better, I guess. So I have the original one and the one that I rewarded. I love that this is very complete, but again, just for a purpose statement, I think it would be nice to have something a little bit shorter. So I came up with to deepen the ability to foster, contribute to, let me read the original one. To learn, become better at fostering, contributing, and improving social behavior and cooperation in and between groups in order to contribute to well-being of both human and nature, use the capacity humans have to work on the global needs, help groups converge and share purpose, support and facilitate collective action, to learn how to fall in love with each other and the planet again, seed evolutionary processes for the sake of us now and future generations in order to create a world that works for all living beings. So what I did is I kind of chose sentences that kind of cover everything that's there, but not giving like the details. So I came up to deepen the ability to foster, contribute to, and enhance pro-social behavior and cooperation within and between groups, cultivating a love for each other and the planet to help create a world that works for all living beings.
Okay. So,
stop. You want me to stop sharing now, Annika?
Yeah, maybe you can drop it in the chat so people can read it. That would be helpful.
I did already.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So, are there any major objections to the modifications by Andrea? If not, we take this as our purpose, and I would like to. I do not see anybody who is objecting, so I'd like to go meta right now on what happened.
So Marcelo's added something in the chat.
Yeah, maybe Annika, I miss this part of the original text. I think it's very important. It's about supporting and facilitating collective action.
Okay.
It's a key part of pro-social purpose. Anyway.
Can you weave that in Andrea's text?
Oh, do you want him to do it or because I have it right here? So I don't know if you want Marcelo to.
Yeah. Marcelo, could you weave that in?
Yeah, I can. Where is the link? Is in the chat. You can go there.
You also could tell Andrea what she she could write so we can see it.
Okay. So maybe after cooperation within and between groups, support and facilitate collective action. Yeah, and come up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marcelo, would that feel complete for you right now?
Yeah, it's much better for me. Yeah.
Okay. So if we put this one in the chat. Is it in the chat? Not yet. You put it in the chat, Andre.
Yeah,
do you?
right now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. Are there? Oh yeah. If you just could give us a thumbs up, or a thumbs down if there are major objections. So far. Okay, so I could do that too. Yeah, good. So I do not see any major objections, and I'd like to go meta on the process, what happened, and what we just did, because this is one of the crucial themes we will go through, and this is decision-making processes. And what I did last time is a consent-based decision-making process. So I crafted a proposal and asked you, are there any major objections? And what happened is that I made it pretty strong, but still Andrea was not happy. And I didn't wanted to have the crafting of the sentence within the group, because that eats time. And I didn't want to wordsmith within the group. So I asked her, because she was not content with it, would you be willing to craft a version that is shorter and bring it next time, which she did right now? And I did the same process again. So we had Marcelo having a little objection, and I did the same thing again, asked him, oh, could you improve on it so it works for you? And then again asked the group. And this is much faster, and it's much more likely to converge on a common decision compared to consensus. Because you asked not for is everybody happy with it, but can everybody live with that? And within that consent based decision making process, you have like a how do you say that? If you like a volume, you can ask, are there major objections, or is there a slight? Do you have any slight bad feeling about this? So if you do the letter thing, then you will get much more people saying, "Oh, I'm not so happy with this or that." Formulation, and if you need to be really fast, then you ask for major objections. So just to make the process open. Are there any questions to that or comments, addings?
Yeah, I might add a little bit here. And we can revisit this later on in the course when this is the topic. But what Annika just spoke to is one of the key features of convergent facilitation. And it's and when folk like us are engaging in wanting to facilitate processes that help people converge on something and get to action, this, raising the bar or lowering the bar in terms of what people are prepared to commit to is kind of really important aspect. And so at one end of the continuum, we can say, if you have a major objection, are you happy to go with it? And so you can imagine in situations where this decision might not have a major impact on the group, or you've got a sense that most people are getting on with each other and are happy to move forward, you can push the bar really high and just say, look, so we can move on. If you can live with it, unless you have really major concerns, let's go with what we've got, even though it's not perfect. And so then people will move on. But then the other extreme, if you're in a situation where there's actually low trust or people aren't speaking up, or that there's kind of an elephant in the room and there's there's undiscussables. And so then you might push the bar right down and just say, look, if you have a slight niggle, if there's anything at all that's kind of concerning you about this, please bring it up. And so you can moderate that level. Major concerns, unless you have a really major concern, let's move on. Unless you have a real, any concern at all, let's hear it. So that is the key innovation in convergent facilitation. And what it pulls for is an insight into the needs of those that are actually in the room, the needs of those that are implicated by the decision that's being taken, and to make sure that their voice is actually woven into the decision and the purpose. But that's what's behind it. And I think last week when Annika facilitated this, the importance of that process, raising the bar, major, versus minor, got lost a little bit. And so I felt important to actually bring that up, because formally you might be wondering, well, why did we revisit this? And this is actually one of the reasons why we put this back on the agenda, to actually make this a learning moment, because this is the learning. So it's not so much about the actual wording, because I'm sure, in the original drafting of what Annika did, our voice was there. My sense that most people were pretty happy with it. There wasn't any major concerns. But unless you really felt there was a major concern, Andrea. But that's That's why. I mean, that is a, and it's really good. I mean, if you're in conversion facilitation and you've got that at the foreground of your mind, then it enables you to facilitate the process of convergence much more effectively. That's the barometer. The rest of it is just formal process. Get a proposal, get an idea, but then say, who's happy enough with that it is, or yeah. Clear? Does that make sense? Yeah.
So conversion facilitation is the like raising the bar type,
No,
or
no.
is it
So
moving?
converging is helping people to converge on a decision that they're happy to live with. All right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so you the resolution of that is in the hands of the facilitator.
Yeah.
And so the thing that you're facilitating is where the bar is.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're inviting input. So you might get a whole bunch of ideas on a whiteboard, and you might get a sense, yeah, like everybody's on the same page here, and we've kind of got it. It's a bit messy, and so you might raise the bar really high. So well, look, our voices are there, unless there's any major concerns. If we understand each other enough to move, and people say, yep, I'm good. And so then minor things that people would focus on if they had the time can just not crowd out the time.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you know there's unspoken concerns in the room or there's a hidden issue, then you just change the question. If you have the slightest hesitation about this proposal, please speak up.
Yeah.
If
That
they,
makes sense.
and particularly when there's people who don't like, if there's dominating voices, and sort of strong personalities, and those who are actually subject to, they're shy or subject to oppression or something like that, then lowering the bar gets their voice in the room. And you may even want to be explicitly ask, I notice, Alex, you haven't spoken up. Do you have a concern? So you draw it out
Yeah.
and you actively weave it in to the discourse. And so that everybody's voice is there and you've converged on it. So the sense is everybody's voice and needs represented? And then you just moderate where the bar is. Got it?
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a very powerful process when you get it right. Yeah.
Marcelo.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to have this conversation about the courage of stepping up and saying you don't agree with something.
Mm.
And when you try to converge, eventually you can miss minority point of view. And so there's deep democracy that involves everyone, even if one person doesn't agree. He or she is his voice or her voice is very important. Deep democracy is a very interesting process. I think it's not the object here, but it's much more inclusive than converging, and it's a technique for itself. And especially for causes, social causes, when people they want to be heard.
Mm.
And so for minorities is a very important process of stepping up and saying, because this mostly is about power, isn't it? Power with and power over. So and for me, for instance, that a bit of introverted. So for me, it's difficult to say something,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I don't agree with that. And when you are just by yourself saying something and the others are not saying anything, just say something is an act of courage,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not
Mm-hmm.
easy.
yeah.
It's also about courage and trust within the group. And if there are power differences, this is an added issue that might be interesting to look at before,
Yeah, yeah.
depending this really depends what kind of process you might choose or not, how the group works.
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah, sorry, can I just invite
Yeah.
Marcelo? I noticed that, I mean, you and Pam are actually scheduled for the 11th of June to facilitate a session on converging on proposals for action. That might be a
Yep.
really good opportunity for you to bring up methods you've learned in deep democracy. We can discuss that as we're approaching it. Be great.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in to reinforce this again from the Becoming Pro-Social course. This was definitely eye-opening for me, and also want to reinforce for Annika that it definitely works the way you're going meta for me. That is something as I've done even in smaller scenarios at work, trying to get people to understand that difference between consent and consensus has been very effective. And just drawing back to understand you don't have to be happy with everything here, understanding that there's that levels that we can dial into. So I personally have started with very small things in my groups that's really been effective. But again, reinforcing for Annika that it's working for me the way you're explaining this too.
Yeah, thank you. That helps me to know that it works for you. This is valuable feedback. Pacifica, you wrote something in the chat. Would you like to say something to it?
I mean, I was just kind of reflecting on, I'm from an Asian general context. And I'm thinking of when there is this, hey, does everyone agree on this? There's going to be a lot of pressure to be like, no one else is saying anything. So like, I'm not going to say anything, right? Or just like with like the loud voices in the room. Well, these three really loud, likable people agree with it. So I better shut up, right? And so even like I imagine facilitating that context, I'd probably lower the bar a little bit more, right? Just as like I'd probably be starting lower rather than let's move quick and efficiently, because I would hate to move quick and efficiently and down the road we don't really have consent or consensus.
Yep.
Just reading the cultural context as well.
This is a really important remark. Culture, to have culture in mind, and also social scripts within the culture, how power dynamics work, and how speaking up at all is accepted or not accepted, and the roles people have within society. So this is definitely something really to look at, and especially if you have a diverse group where different people from different cultures are in, there it can get interesting, definitely.
And even with people who are just simply introverted, I see this time and again when I'm not facilitating but participating. In business, we need to move very quickly. And so if you choose not to say anything, we're going to assume that you consent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's another way of saying the same thing as clubbing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So I feel drawn to move on with the next stop of this session, which is the facilitation bit. So it's Pacifica and me. And Pacifica would say something about the general context. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. So it's about pro-social conversations, the bit we are facilitating. And we thought, okay, what we did in Becoming Pro-Social is a very small part of thinking about what makes a conversation pro-social. And I think each of these parts could be fleshed out much more, and people could delve deeper. And we thought, okay, the context would be for us a bigger course just on pro-social conversations, and we would start with a systemic approach. Yeah, so I give it to you, Pacifico, to do the next bit.
Yeah. So welcome everyone. I just want to orient us a little bit before we dive into the actual exercise. So we have a little exercise and a group discussion format for us today. And the goal is to have everyone actually have some practice thinking systematically, kind of holistically, discussing how would we actually move this in a pro-social conversation? What does that even mean in this specific context? And we really want everyone to also dive into two specific aspects of pro-social conversations. One, giving helpful information, but also very clearly structuring the conversations we want to start with someone. And so in service of that, Annika is going to, in a little bit, describe this hypothetical situation and explain what perspectives and roles everyone in this room is going to take, like what hats you're putting on as you enter this context. And then we're going to break up into two groups, Annika in one, me in the other, just there as facilitators to answer any questions. And we're going to just let people talk and explore and kind of think expansively about, okay, what is pro-social, what is not pro-social, how do we shift, how do we do power with in this context, bringing in all the stuff that we've learned with an eye towards what conversation would I actually want to initiate in this context. And hey, bud, sorry, 1 second. Hey, bud. Dad's right in his speaking mode.
This is great.
Yeah.
I love Wild Boy so much. So where I was at, right? And we're gonna have about 10 minutes in that group space of just open discussion. We really want to hear people's thoughts and where they're thinking and what they're coming out from. And we intentionally broke up the groups to make it a little smaller so everyone has time to talk. So please bring all of yourself to this, right? There's no wrong answers. We want everyone's perspectives kind of on the table. Then we'll give you like a 5-minute warning. And in that, we really want everyone to individually sit and think, okay, who would I want to speak to first in this situation? You might want to talk to everyone. You might want to be like, I got to talk to this person. I got to sort out this. I got to have this. Just the first. Prioritize one. Pick one kind of from the scenario. Who would I want to speak to first? And like, what was the purpose of that conversation? And then really write out like your first couple sentences to this person as you try to structure the conversation. So, it would be like that first introduction of like basically requesting to talk to this person about something. How would you actually structure it? Like type it out. We'll come back together as a big group. Everyone will share theirs in chat, right? And we encourage everyone to read over other ones, give a little thumbs up to anything that you're like, oh, that actually would feel like really beneficial in this context, right? And you can thumbs up all of them if you think they're all great, but we just want people to have a moment to review the other ways people have approached this and what they've thought about. And then we'll take it from there. That'll pretty much close out our time. So Annika, I'm going to let you introduce the context, and I'm going to send out in chat this document so people can read it and sit with it in the groups as well, okay?
Exactly. So I'll give you a context. And surprisingly, it's a medical context. So you are a medical doctor in a big team, and a technician from another sub-team of your big team comes to you with a concern. Their team leader claims that this person was eating while working, which is against the policy. And the technician states that this never happened. And the technician adds that he was recently invited to a legal hearing by HR, which was also initiated by his team leader. And he expects that he will receive a warning letter, which is one punishment below being fired. And the technician asks you for help in these situations. And he reached out to you as you are a person of trust to him because you work with him on a regular basis. And so that the technician is a good worker, and you can easily lead him with positive reinforcement. And you are also aware that the rest of the team of a technician supports this person against their team leader's accusations. You also know the team leader. She is not as experienced in running the day-to-day operation in terms of leading the team. And she has the habit of getting defensive once things don't roll as she likes to. And this team leader recently replaced the previous supervisor, which was dearly loved by the team. So, and the hospital has a hierarchical structure, which you can see in the document Pacifico posted. And you are part of this structure, and you are not in a hierarchical position above the technician or the supervisor, but you work in a parallel team. So this is the context. And in this context, if your hope was to help this situation to move forward in a more pro-social way or in a pro-social way, who would you want to speak to first? And how would you frame this conversation as you try to start this pro-social conversation? And now you should see in the organigram of your team. So you are in one of the teams with the MDs, and the technician is in the light blue team. Okay, and then you have the hospital structure, and there you have different departments and large departments and sub-departments, and your department where the technician also works is the yellow one, so it's radiology. And then there's a workers council where people can go if they want to address problems they can't solve. This is sort of the last way to escalate if they can't solve within the team. And of course, they can go up the hierarchy as well within their team. So in radiology, it would be the team leader of the technicians, which is even above the team leader I was talking about of this technicians team, and then there's the department leadership. Okay. So are there any questions to that scenario?
This sounds like a real scenario, Annika. It sounds like the stories you tell.
It is. It is a real one.
Yeah.
I have a question. With the legal hearing with HR, is that in relation to eating on the job, like the accusation that's been made, or is that like another issue that has happened?
It's also this issue, and
Okay.
it's also punctuality.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? So if not, Robert, would you put us into two groups? Pacifico and me in each one of the groups, two groups, and we discuss this 10 minutes. Pardon me?
So I'll create two rooms. Now, if everyone opens, you can choose which room you're going to. So you tell us which one to go into, Annika.
I do not.
Hit break.
Okay. I
I'll join
can't
group
see.
2 and you join group 1, and then
Okay.
let people know which one to filter in. Does that sound good?
All right. So which?
Yeah.
So if I put you two in room, yeah, okay, yeah, Pacifico room 2.
There we go.
One of many situations, actually. So I will. Everybody is there? Yes. Great. So maybe a quick round. How was that for you?
I wanted more information.
Yeah, fair enough. Any thoughts?
For me, it was, I think, enough. I don't know. I was able to focus on, I don't know. It's easier for me to focus on some facts and roll with that scenario. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
jump too quickly, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I found it really stimulating. I was like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. Like my mind went all over the place. And yeah, I wanted a lot more information as well.
Mm-hmm.
I started struggling in my head with a culture and a hierarchy that is power over,
Mm-hmm.
it seems.
It
Um,
is.
and how you bring a concept of power with so that you can develop relationships with your team.
Mm-hmm.
That would be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Andrea, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just finding a balance between not washing my hands and saying go deal with it yourself. It's kind of like I'm going to give you some good advice, but it's your problem. So finding a balance between not washing my hands and then at the same time not getting my nose into something that I'm not supposed to get into. So finding that balance is kind
Mm-hmm.
of hard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, for me it would be, first of all, information and facts and try to explore this system,
Mm-hmm.
the interdependencies, and to understand the whole situation with the technician and bring that consciousness about. It's not him or her, it's the whole
Mm-hmm.
working. So in this more cognitive space first
Mm-hmm.
of
And maybe now everybody could share what he or she crafted in the chat. So we can have a look at this. Copy. So.
Mhm.
Are there so far? There's a third one. Oh. Mm. Mm. Okay. I think we miss a few ones. I think Robert is still missing, and Josh. Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So, as we have half an hour to facilitate, and this half hour is up right now, we give a little framing what we would do from here on. Pacifica, would you like to do that?
Yeah, sure, I can. So from this point on, right, we'd ask people to react, reflect on other people's experiences, like, just kind of draw the wisdom in the group from a little bit, right? But also maybe take a moment to think about systematically, like, what is guiding this decision in either way of who you talk to and what you frame, right? Exploring why certain people felt specific responses would have been most beneficial. Like if there was some responses where there's like 4 or 5 upvotes, it's like, ooh, like a lot of us gravitated to this. Why? Why did this resonate? Um, also, it came up in our group a little bit, but also just thinking about what we see as the challenge can really determine how we intervene in what sense. And there was also, I think Andrea brought attention to earlier, like the structures and obeying them. Do we act outside of them? Do we stay within them? Where's pro-social in that, right? Um, I also would definitely like a 100% go to a place of our own psychological flexibility of like, okay,
Mm.
imagine you actually had to start this conversation and this was the best way to be pro-social. What would show up for you that would get in the way, right? Oh, like what if I'm wrong? What if this person's mad at me? What if,
Mm.
and just to have people explore that even in themselves, because we're part of this too, right? Now that we've been kind of like, if we're going to act in this situation as some kind of leader, as some kind of power with, like we have to attend to our own stuff that shows up that might get us into this, do this, or I'm going to wash my hands of this, because that feels a lot safer, right? Than actually leading in some way with power with, um, or, maybe not. Maybe it's like, oh, my power with is I'm going to tell this person to empower them to go talk to the workers' council to make sure it stays within the authorized things and I'm not triangulated. And like, I really want to empower this person. That is my move for pro-social, right? And just exploring that. Again, there was no wrong answer, as I said in my group a couple of times, of just practicing thinking about all this pro-social stuff and then also dialing it down to, okay, how would I frame a conversation where I'm asking someone to have a conversation? Like, how do I enter into that, right? And kind of just going from there. So that's all we had for our time. Really thank you all for putting on your MD hats and pretending to be doctors for the purposes of this assignment. Annika didn't have to pretend, all the rest of us did.
Mm.
And I believe we're shifting into, well, Robert, you want to take us somewhere?
Yeah, it's particular. So, yeah, no, thanks both. Um, so I'm kind of aware we're winding up in about an hour, got an hour left in the session.
Mhm.
So I reckon let's have a 5-minute bio break and then come back after the break and we'll split our time into two. In the first half, I'd like to have a conversation about how did we receive the session that Annika and Pacifico just facilitated? What about its content worked for you? Their methods that they used, how did it work for you? Any implications for you within your own professional context? Any suggestions on how they could improve facilitating this? We'll spend about half an hour doing that. and then we'll segue into a consideration of next week's topic and why that's so important within the broader arc of the processes that we're aiming to help people facilitate in this course.
May I ask you something?
Mm,
Will we start this first part with a self-reflection by Pacifica and me?
that's right, we will. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Okay, so see you back here in 5 minutes.
Mm.
Welcome back. Greetings all. So let's begin. Maybe Annika and Pacifica, you can share your reflections on this whole experience, preparing for it and delivering it. And then I'd like to actually do a full round and hear from everybody, how they experienced it. What was it that worked well for them in the session? Any suggestions and maybe a reflection on the implications of what we've of this phase, in the program, pro-social conversations, the implications of that in your own work. But yeah, so Annika and Pacifica.
I can go first, if you're okay with that, Annika. So just going through kind of the facilitation process, I think some of the things that went well and some of the things that didn't go well is kind of how I'm framing this. Is kind of just like a use of humor, rolling with disruptions. Wild Boy came in, I just rolled with it. You name a kid liberty or freedom, he's going to act like it. So I fully own that. When it got to the facilitation group with the group that I had, I felt like there was kind of an appropriate amount of like open questions to facilitate thinking, reflective listening. And something that I did was when people brought up stuff and were kind of processing it, I would often reflect it and very directly peg it to pro-social stuff that we had talked about. Like, oh, that's a power over thing. Oh, that's this, right? And then people were also doing that themselves, but just kind of highlighting, hey, you are thinking in this way. I feel like, there was also trying to keep it like appropriate level of buy-in and vulnerability. There are some things that I said where it was like, there's no wrong answer. Like, we're all just learning this. It's okay. Like diffusing any sort of, I'm a facilitator, but I'm up here and I'm like being the expert judge on this stuff. I was like, no. Like, I just learned this 3 weeks ago with Josh. Right. And even just what we asked of people, I felt like the task itself, it required a little bit of vulnerability because you're putting out thoughts there in a group of very thoughtful people who are very intelligent and are learning all this stuff. And then I think the most vulnerable thing, maybe for me, just at least from my perspective, was putting my response in chat. And what if I get it wrong? What if other people don't like it? What if it's not one of the most helpful ones, right? What if I post what mine and then other people's are way better, right? And I intentionally, as a facilitator, I put mine there in first. And it was actually one that I knew Annika didn't agree with, right? It's triangulation or whatever. And I was just like, no, this was my instinct. I'll go with it. I'll write it up. I did the exercise with the group. I actually hadn't planned on that. But I was like, I'm asking them to do it. So I'm going to do it. And, kind of put that out there first to take the hit, right? And just did my best to like make it okay, to not be perfect, to not have the quote unquote right answer. I think some of the things that I would have changed or didn't quite go well was as I was like going over this thing initially, I felt like one thing we could do was provided more information about the situation because I felt a lot of people were like, my conversations would be like, I need more information, which I think is a great move and like probably would be appropriate in this context. But I would love to have had more opportunities to see where people would go. So if we had provided more things like you concretely know this was a false accusation, or this, or it would be outside of HR to go talk to this person. Or if we had said like, hey, HR has actually asked people to resolve things informally if can before going to the workers' council. If we had kind of provided more concrete information, like guaranteeing them, like this, then I think it would have allowed for a lot more opportunities for people to go in a lot of different ways, which I think have been really interesting to me. And then maybe a meta level thing is our encouragement was to focus on like one aspect of our topic. So like, there's a lot in pro-social conversations, providing good information, framing conversations, emotion, reflecting emotion, listening for values and needs, and we kind of try to do like framing conversations and maybe providing good information in that of like in the conversation I'm having. But I also realized in the facilitation, there was also this level of analyzing from kind of a pro-social perspective. Like you have to kind of think about what's going wrong here before you decide who do I want to talk to first. So I felt maybe we were trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's just kind of the nature of this thing of like we have to think at these different levels and reflect on these different things to get to a place where we're practicing this in like a real life scenario. And even in becoming pro-social, I remember Annika modeling, this is how you listen well, right? It was a very discrete practice. And then we practiced with one person trading spaces where it was very discrete. So maybe just the exercise we chose was bringing in too much, but I also liked it. So I don't really apologize for it. But maybe that was a way we could have improved this from like if we were to restructure it or do it again. So that's what's coming up for me. Annika, what about you?
Yeah, thank you. I liked the way to start with this like overview scenario. So this is the big thing, and this is the system you are in, and what would you do? So, and I totally agree that the crafting of the scenario could have been much more detailed and thought through. This is definitely something I will go into, how to craft scenarios, because I find this a very interesting way to facilitate, also to give different groups different scenarios. So different roles and different background information from where they act, to really go through such a situation. And I like the systemic lens to have in the prosocial conversation thing. So like if I had a module which went deeper into it, I would definitely have that in it. And start from there. So have the system in the view, and then also go to the one-to-one situation. So really flesh that out on different levels. So and I think what worked is that it made people think about the system, go, oh, this is what I have to think about, and how are the power dynamics. And also, even if the information was not perfect, only the people asking for it made the awareness that, oh, I would need to know this in order to decide on X, Y, and Z. So this is something I find really helpful, and I like to start with experiential exercises like that, because it sparks discussions and usually gives a bigger opportunity for learning for the participants, compared to me telling, oh, listen, this is the model and this is how we do it. And I think this is something that definitely worked. Yeah, and I would improve on the scenario bit and on timing.
Yeah. No, thanks, Annika. It's yeah, I'd be interested to do a round, get everybody's reflections, and then we can the key takeaways will be there. But I wonder, who would like to put up their hand next and then pass it on? Yeah, thanks, Pam.
So I know that I was one of the individuals that asked, I need more information. And so I appreciate you responding to that. But as I have been thinking about it, what you did by not giving us a lot of information is put us into a very real messy situation that we will be confronted with. And it made me have to pause and think through, is this conflict? Is this power over? How does it all relate to the framework? And what's going to be the best entryway and for who? And so I actually think it was wise to have a case that wasn't too specific, because that's life. And you have to make some assumptions to determine how you're going to move forward if you don't have all the information, and we never have all the information, right? So I appreciated that. In the beginning, and I think this is more on me than anything else, you went very quickly through what was going to take place, and I felt disoriented, but I'm tired.
Mm.
And so appreciating, orienting us to the case, and talking maybe just a little bit slower. But again, that's on me, most likely.
Yeah. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
Who's next? You want to pass it on? Pam, did you want to pass it on to someone? Sorry, can't hear.
Josh.
Josh.
Thanks, Pam. I guess just reflecting on the process first, it's definitely very effective for me. As Alex said, it was definitely stimulating to get into those points. And I was initially reflecting the same way, thinking like more facts so we can limit speculation on things that might not be as useful. But what are those? I mean, it's so I totally agree with what Pam just said. I think it is definitely good to have that open-ended, but obviously for Annika as a facilitator, if there's something in particular you really are focused on, then because I think some of that was like getting lost in bureaucratic realities, for instance, like if that's what we want as a part of it, great, but still very effective for me. And all of these aspects of just the back and forth reflection and hearing the different perspectives, super effective for me, because I definitely just get caught in my own response, and stopping, listening, connecting gives you that perspective, and holding that perspective lightly still. But reflecting right here, right now, that I for whatever it's worth, what I feel I want to say out loud is, because again, that scenario for me was enough, and I just focused in on that bureaucratic piece. And I think what I didn't even do until I was reflecting now was I was focusing on going to the leader, because I just assumed in a power over scenario, they're the ones responsible for being more pro-social. And that, I don't know, that was an interesting reflection for me in my reaction.
Yeah, right. It's yeah,
But final point, I guess, that I would also say to what Pam said, that first, just practically, I think I would have had been more effective for me to read that scenario first rather than hear it. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Do you want to pass it on?
I will pass it to Marcelo.
Thanks, Josh. Well, for me, it was really great to have contact with that context. That's very typical in organizations. So it's normally based on sanction and enforcement. And so I love to think about that, about the challenge of what I would do if I were you. And maybe what I miss was more storytelling approach, because I think it's Annika's experience, isn't it? So maybe I would say that in first person. And after that, I would ask people, is it clear for you? Have you got some questions about that? Because for me, it was an experience that I could handle because there was a text, and as I'm foreigner, for me, it's difficult to understand you, especially when you speak in a fast way. Like Pacifico is brilliant, but you talk very fast. So for me, it's difficult to get it, So for me, the text was important to understand the situation, But for me, it's okay, a facilitation process, but maybe, in a sense-making approach, that I think ProSocial is closer to that approach, and maybe away from case studies, because I think you made that as a case study, that's fine. But maybe in a ProSocial approach, it's more about sense-making, storytelling.
Mm.
I would pass to Andrea.
Yes, first of all, very stimulating. I'm still thinking about it, not just when we were doing the exercise, but just giving feedback itself can be interesting here. So I did like the approach of giving a real case scenario. I think it's very effective. Um, I love that it wasn't just pro-social conversations. This was much deeper than that because it's about how do you handle a situation and how pro-social do you want to be. So I like that. I also thought that so maybe the way it was framed at the beginning was um, not as accurate, I think, because you said we want you to structure a conversation. So from what I remember from becoming prosocial, structuring a conversation is more like, okay, you're gonna talk to someone and ahead of time you're gonna let them know, what the outcome is for the conversation. And so in my experience, going through the exercise, it didn't feel like that was the tool that I was using. It was more just looking at the context in general, and I ended up
Mhm.
going for a different approach. Maybe my approach was in with the structuring the conversation, but it was more the pro-social kind of um, path of let's state the facts. How do you feel? Be careful with what you disclose. So it was more open than just structuring a conversation. I loved it. I think you guys did a great job because I sometimes like a little bit of the conceptual understanding. So maybe a little bit of, conceptual understanding would have been nice, even like if it's 5 minutes. Okay, so what are pro-social conversations? And because I know that I think Pacifico mentioned it, given information and but if we can have a little bit more theory, I think it just makes it easier
Mm.
to go through the exercise. And I'll pass it to.
Before you passed, Robert, did you hit record?
It's
Okay. Yes, you did. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll pass it to Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, I really liked the case study and like a few other people. I liked the ability to go and read it again and also have the visual representations of the hierarchy and the structures that were in place. I just find visuals really helpful. And if I'm just given a lot of words, like I kind of get lost sometimes, or it's harder for me to like structure it in my head in terms of how I think about it. I found like particularly for me because I also work in a health setting with a very hierarchical structure, and I'm actually a team lead myself. I was projecting a lot of my own experiences onto it. And I just found that really interesting to notice my own indoctrination into a hierarchical system. So because I kind of went in and just made a lot of assumptions about, oh, okay, you have to do this, you should do this, this is the best way forward. But obviously, every context is still different, even if it has a similar hierarchy. So I think it was just really helpful to notice that automatic bias that I have coming out very obviously. And yeah, kind of similar to what Andrea was saying, I think it would have been helpful to just have like even just like 3-4 minutes at the start of a refresher because it's been quite a while since I've done becoming pro-social, and just a bit of a refresher of like, these are the elements of pro-social conversation. And then I'm sure my brain would have just been like, oh yes, yeah, that's great. Whereas, yeah, I couldn't quite remember all the specific details. So I think that little refresher would have been helpful before going into the exercise. But yeah, I found it really stimulating and a great learning experience.
Yeah.
And I'll pass it to Robert.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody. It's I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying, but what are the impressions that I was left with? I mean, scenarios are great, aren't they? I think all of us had the same experience of being escorted into our own real world situation that was a parallel. And I think it would have been lovely, Annika, if uh, as Marcelo said, you had have right up front just said, look, I want to introduce you to a real situation I'm in, and I'd like to receive some of your advice, on how I could respond as a physician in this context. And I think, I mean, there's a couple of things going on for me at the moment. One is, I guess, the this process within the context of this course, but also how it matters within the context of our own lives and professions and what we want to do with it. And so there's kind of two classes of objectives we're going for here. One is in relation to the course itself, but then the other one is in relation to each of these little mini sessions that each of us will be, co-hosting. And so this course, Leading ProSocial, it is really to encourage us to step up into the realm of facilitating these processes within real life contexts. And in the Becoming course, we're introduced to just the barest of essentials of what it could look like, and some tools that are associated with facilitating these processes. It's not that they're all the tools. Like, for example, in the Becoming course, the exercise is going to a breakout, and A and B, and you exchange information and you debrief the experience of it. This is another method of actually inviting people to start contemplating, what does it actually mean to have a pro-social conversation? There's the processes and there's the methods. Even the Jensen's diagram, structuring, giving and receiving good information, and moving your way to collaborative action. I mean, they're processes, but the way in which you can do that can vary enormously. And so I think within the broader arc of the program, it's to simultaneously give us the experience of facilitating one of those things and just trying out a bit, trying out a technique that is directly relevant to our real world contexts. Whether you want to duplicate uh, and practice what was introduced in the Becoming course, which is kind of what the session yesterday was very similar to that, because I co-hosted that. This is quite different, a scenario. So the way in which you teach it is utterly up to you. And the objective is to reinforce the integrity of enhancing these processes that are essential to pro-social conversations. And I think you two did it. I think you definitely escorted all of us into a world where we were really invited to actually take on those. Like as you said, Pacifico, you found yourself thinking about, well, hang on, how am I tracking inside my own shoes? Am I responding with flexibility, and which is kind of great, and I think so in terms of your actual presentation, because that was kind of more about it in the arc of the thing, I think the scenario was great, and I think it's a fantastic method. I don't use it often myself, but you actually I think the way I introduce scenarios is the way in which Marcelo was suggesting stories. Like, yeah, that's a scenario I can relate to that. And so that worked really well because the purpose is for us to get better at doing this in our real world. And I would have loved to have had both of you like in the actual process of unpacking our responses. Like I find going into chat and suddenly going meta and things like that. I would have really appreciated like a natural flow, something like you saying, Annika, I'm in this situation. It's real. I've had this technician come to me, and I'm really trying to figure out what to do. Pacifico and I have met, and this is, how we've responded to it. What do you reckon? And you invited us to think about a response. We've all put it in the chat, and none of us shared that. I haven't had a chance to read anybody's, and I was really curious. I thought, gosh, this is going to be amazing to actually hear how others would respond and learn, how I can apply their wisdom to my own context. So I think the upside is, I mean, it was just real. You two are real. You showed up. It was a real live context. I would have loved to have for us to have been engaged in a very natural way with, yeah, help us think about this and to unpack what it is we've shared. And I think it could have been much tighter. That was
Mm.
my own sense. Um, yeah. I mean, any other, just before I segue us into the final bit of today's session, is there any other reflections, Annika or Pacifico, and or others like key takeaways from this?
Yeah, I have maybe two things. One that is really, really helpful is to actually put it into storytelling. I'm actually this is something I can do and I'm usually good at. So
Mm,
this is I'm asking myself, why didn't I do this? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. And this is much, much more natural and gets usually more connection to everybody.
yeah, yeah,
So I will definitely work on that and think about how to use the chat and how to share information. The chat is always for me a bit wobbly
yeah, yeah.
because it disconnects. Um,
Mm,
and for the last bit, what you said, we decided not to go into discussion for time constraints
yeah,
because it would have taken too long. Maybe we could have shortened it, as you said, it
mm,
could have been denser. I don't know. We had the feeling when preparing, just to let you know why we did it,
mm,
how we did it.
mm,
It was half an hour, and
yeah, yeah. So I think this
we
is,
would go from there to group discussion usually.
yeah, yeah. So I think going forward, this is a lesson for all of us going forward because we've got these 2.5 hours, and the first hour, hour and a half is going to be centered on some of us presenting a session and then trying to get, to debrief it or start debriefing it. So the flow of today will probably just be replicated. So I think as each of us step up to facilitate our session, choose a little chunk of the process that you put your hand up for that is your learning edge, rather than try and do a whole session, and so that'll make it much easier for the rest of us as a group to respond to it and actually enhance your capacity to grow as a facilitator. And I know in that process we'll learn. It'll be very focused, and no doubt your learning edges will often be on the same ones. So I think that's a case in point for all of us. Just don't try and facilitate the whole gig. Just one thing that is your learning edge, but in a way that would educate us. Yeah. Sorry, I saw a couple of hands go there before. Pam and
Maybe Pacifica do you
Pacifico, do
want
you
to
want to say
say?
something?
One thing that I just thought about, I think Andrea and Alex brought up, like kind of just a little orientation more towards what is a pro-social conversation, what are the parts of that, even
Yeah,
laser
yeah,
focus
yeah,
on the reframing. we did have originally, we had kind of like those helpful questions for both giving helpful information and how to frame a conversation. But
Yep.
we took them out just to kind of let people take it wherever they wanted to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe that actually, in my introduction of overview, it would have been helpful to be like, hey, like this is some st helpful things, and this is what, or even if we're just laser framing on how
Mm.
to structure a conversation. That's what we want to practice. These are
Yep.
some good questions, and
Yep.
then flow from there.
Yep. Yep.
So just like kind of a practical thing.
Yep.
Pam, did you want to go? I saw your hand up.
I was only going to point out that Alex asked a really good question in the chat, and it looks like it was responded to.
Mm.
It was the difference between storytelling and scenarios or cases.
Yeah. Did you kind of get it, Alex? Did you get the difference?
Yeah, Marcelo explained it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. So thank you, Marcelo.
Yeah.
Just yeah, I hadn't heard that sort of differentiation before, so I wasn't quite sure what you meant, but that's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, I mean, I'd like to segue us now into next week's session and more broadly the arc. And I guess uh actually one final point. I wondered, if both Pacifico and Annika, did you, when you came together to plan for this, actually nut out what your objectives were for the session?
Yes, we started
Yeah.
with,
You did, yeah, okay.
yeah, kind of like what do we want to focus on? I
Mhm.
it was like practicing this like framing and giving information.
Right. So did you deliver on those? I'm wondering now, post, did you deliver on your objectives?
I would say so. I would say so.
Do you want to just share them? Because this is another
We,
important part of this process.
yeah,
I encourage
I'll,
each of
I'll,
you
I'll
is
share.
to name your objectives,
Oh shoot.
and then
Uh,
then we can check, you can check at the conclusion of your session whether you've delivered against them.
I just realized I deleted it from our Google Doc that we were sharing, but we
yeah.
did
Well,
follow through.
I can tell. So one thing was definitely to get people thinking about the whole system,
Mm,
and within the system also to take into account, okay, there are different players, and if I want to make the situation more pro-social,
yep.
what um, do the power dynamics to it, and how do I act within them?
Yeah, okay. So that was one of your objectives. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
And
that's
I think the other one was just like a direct practice of like framing a
yeah.
conversation or giving
yeah, good.
information.
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's good to know. So just a point as we go forward. But listen, going forward, I mean, one of the things that I wanted to share with you today was why this order. So in the whole arc of the program, you start with pro-social conversations, then we get into developing psychological flexibility, and then shift to the group context. And I just want to explain why it is actually in that order. Um, I think, as you all probably appreciate, the one of the things that is increasingly apparent to us is it's the our collective quality of presence that actually determines the quality of our cultural environments, our socio-cultural context and the way in which institutions are structured and that kind of thing. And if we're not showing up authentically, if we're self-censoring and editing, or we're being, run by some trauma in the past or an argument we had, or something we're anxious about tomorrow, then we're not going to be sensitive to the needs of those that we're with, let alone ourselves. And so what we've found is that the more that people can be fully present to what is needed in any prevailing context and consciously choose to act in a direction that's going to enhance that well-being, things move in that direction. And to the extent that that's not present, everything else, like trying to implement the CDPs or derive an inspiring sense of shared purpose, etc., converge on decisions, it become band-aids because people aren't truly present and responding in ways that are actually healthy. And so developing psychological flexibility, and there's a few of us here, Alex and Pacifico and others, who are, I mean, we all know it. It's a lifelong journey, isn't it? I mean, what we're being invited to actually cultivate is profoundly human. The capacity to actually fully transcend all of experience and have it for its richness. It's not about feeling good, about feeling it all really well and being free to choose to act in a direction that's going to be healthy for you is it's a lifelong endeavor. And it's a journey. I mean, either we're doing it or we're not. And so in order to catalyze that level and that quality of introspection, we introduce the pro-social conversations first and invite people to actually think about the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of another and play it back to them as a prelude to them saying, well, now take that same position in relation to yourself. So step into the realm as you as self as context. And it's a step in the direction of being able to act with radical compassion and build um, uh, communities of radical compassion. And because we shared this yesterday, I mean, I shared it with um, Sophia, who's the co-facilitator around the course. Paul is actually off in Queensland at the moment delivering a course to the Australian New Zealand School of Government. And so he couldn't facilitate. So I stepped in for him yesterday. And when Sophia and I were preparing, I introduced her to a framework on radical compassion that has been written about in the behavioral context. And it inspired her so much that became the content of the session she facilitated. And everyone just spoke about it. It just occupied the conversation from then on. And so I want to share the same with you, given its value. I mean, it's not only in that context. I mean, I've spoken about it at conferences last year, two healthcare conferences with huge audiences. And it was the one thing that just kind of went viral. And so I'll step through it. The first thing, and I'll just pop these in the chat one by one, and you can kind of grab them as you go, is that like this definition of what compassion is. And compassion itself is an overt action. It's a behavior in order to enhance the well-being of another or alleviate the suffering of another. And it's very distinct from empathy. So empathy is without empathy, you actually cannot respond compassionately. So empathy is the simultaneous act of being able to perceive the perspective of another while understanding, the emotional tapestry that's associated with that. So that means a huge, extraordinary quality of presence. Like what is their worldview, and the facts, as they see it, et cetera, et cetera. And what is the emotional, the visceral component of that? And when you catch that, then you can actually act in a direction to enhance their well-being or alleviate the suffering. And I know myself, in order to catch it, like one of the things that came up yesterday was often people said they, like in the giving and receiving good information conversations, they find themselves in their head, and they're not present and not hearing and catching it and that kind of thing. And it's like, how do you do that? Like, how do you get out of your mind and fully present to another while remaining present to your own needs? And it's an extraordinary shift. I mean, I don't know how you experience it, but I know for myself, it is, it is, it turns into like a inner quiet, like an inner serenity, and I'm just there with the other or the other people. And there's this point where it's just like, oh, I've got you. Like it always hits me. And it's a whole of being experience, like, yes. And often I go, yeah, got you. There's a natural rocking back in my seat when it occurs. And so I think the prelude to being able to act compassionately is developing that quality of presence to what is actually going on here and now, and trying to be sensitive to and make sense enough of what is needed and what is valued in the service of the life you're the custodian of, including your own. Because otherwise, compassion can turn into sacrificial altruism. You end up giving a whole lot and costing a huge amount for yourself. So compassionate action is persistently positively reinforcing, focused on well-being. And so these are the four facets of it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because Josh, you and I'll unpack this a bit more when we get together, because this is another way of thinking about developing psychological flexibility, and it's behind the work of the matrix and all that kind of thing. So it's non-contingent. So that means that the service you're rendering toward another is not predicated on some kind of transaction or a reward. It is given purely for the sake of giving. And I don't know about you, but it's often we're loaded, aren't we? Like you kind of you're filled with an expectation. Well, I'm doing this, you should, there should be a response. You should behave. Or whereas real compassion in a behavioral sense is given non-contingently. It's not contingent on any specific response or reward or anything. It is given purely for the sake of being given. The second facet of it, and this is a really interesting thing to speak about, is it's persistently positively reinforcing.
Mhm.
So we are exposed to an endless commentary on how we're underperforming, aren't we?
Mhm.
The press is dishing, it's like this diet of bad news on how we're underperforming as a species and what's going wrong in our relationships. We're often being told, that in some way or another, that what we're doing is it's not to their satisfaction. And and that's from outside, let alone the committee between our ears. They're saying you're not good enough and you've got to get better. With radical compassion, the orientation is absolutely toward what is working.
Mhm.
And I think, a number of you will be aware that there's a significant body of research that shows that if you want people to receive feedback constructively, you need to complement it at least 5 to 1 with genuine acknowledgements, positive reinforcements. Any less than that, no matter how kindly you offer a suggestion, it'll be received as adversely. It'll be received as a threat. And so when you acknowledge something, you truly admire it. Like you cannot fake admiration. You admire a sunset, you a lovely meal, and you naturally acknowledge it. Wow, what a beautiful sunset. What a beautiful piece of art. I love the way in which you use that color. What a lovely gesture. And so if you are not receiving yourself acknowledgements, genuine acknowledgements of what it is that you're doing that is of real value to others, then the rest of it is experienced as an aversive experience. And so if you're engaging in radical compassion, there is in terms of taking people's perspective and catching a sense of their emotional response, is to persistently and acknowledge what you admire about the other person. It's not praise, it's not buttering them up. It is an
Mm.
act of real love. It's just saying, you are a beautiful person to me because, and there's no pretense, and they'll feel it. And so with radical compassion, your service is given freely and it is persistently positively reinforcing. The third facet of it is the acquisition of assent. So assent is beyond consent. So we spoke about the consent process before, where we're inviting people to accept a situation based on whether they're happy with going with it how it is. Assent is actually maintaining that in a sort of thing on an ongoing way. Assent means that the recipient of your service is welcoming it. And as soon as you sense um, you know, that they're not welcoming it, you don't force it on them. So there's no forcing of the service, which is live. So this is also a facet of empathy. So you've got to be fully present all the time. And the last bit is all about protecting the dignity of people. And this aligns very closely with nonviolent communication. It's like the protective use of force. And so you might be in service of someone, but there might be times when their behaviors are abhorrent or they're actually dangerous to you or others or themselves. And so in those situations, in order to preserve life, you would overstep assent and use force to restore health and well-being. So they're kind of a bit of a yin yang of the same thing. But I wanted to bring this up, and because it is, well, it's always been, every time I've introduced this, people have loved it. I've got an article on it. If you want a copy of it, can drop it in the chat in a minute. But it's a very powerful and practical framework. And to me, this is the essence of what's embedded in pro-social conversations. You know, it's being able to be present to what is needed in the service of life, right here, right now, and to structure the interaction in a way that the exchange is loving and restorative and generative and shifts people naturally toward a process of cooperating and collaborating in the service of each other's well-being. And it's a very complex process. I mean, the world's a mess, you know. We've got to learn to do this a lot better. So I think in these courses we are just opening the crack in the door, you know, on how to actually go about this. And these sessions, you know, where we're inviting each other to spend an hour, you know, an hour and a half trying to share our wisdom and best practice in relation to how we'd go about facilitating it, is to help us collectively move in that direction. And so today's conversation, you know, scenario based. There's other ways in which you can do it. Move us toward this. But I think the next week's session that Josh and I will get together and figure out how we're going to do it is radical self-compassion. Like it is orienting all of this toward yourself. Like, can I transcend all of my experience and see how what I'm orienting to, and the stories I'm telling myself, and the worldviews and the emotions I'm feeling about it. And so that's the silent sentient being, as we know, that's here, that has all of that. This subject-object shift is at the heart of it. It's really, it's quite a dance, isn't it? Because you can't stop yourself thinking. But to find that quiet place of serenity is what this work's about. And then at the same time, you know, just being really, you know, what is it that we're doing? Like I know when Annika and I co-facilitated the Becoming course, when we were debriefing afterward, we got into a routine, and Andrea was with us, where we invited you, Annika, to stop and just go into a moment of silence and reflect on what is it that you really valued, you know, your own strengths when you came to that. And I had this sense afterwards you felt that was quite powerful. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, it helps a lot to break with patterns many of us are socialized in
Yep.
to actually pick on the mistakes and always polish that and get better.
Yep.
And to take this other perspective, which is actually much friendlier and also from a learning perspective, much more efficient to look
Mm.
on where does it work already?
Yep.
Where
Yep.
is a step in the
Mm.
direction I want to move?
Yep.
And this is really helpful to in the process I'm in to like reprogram myself, relearn
Mm.
where I want to focus, and this is a decision. And I try to transport it also to my work context. So I constantly look for situations where is an opportunity, an opening where I can reinforce positively.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's very powerful work.
Mm.
But it's and like I'd love to hear like Andrea, she's opening blazing trails in Mexico, and Marcelo in Latin America. We've been doing this work for years. I mean, I know you've had powerful experiences cultivating this capacity as well. I mean, do you want to share a few of your insights?
Yeah, just what you were talking about now, Robert, that especially for me, because I've been designing programs and it's okay that I have to kind of transmit X knowledge to my audience. Just adding this part of just very like heartfelt connection with people.
Mm.
So I was with a few mothers from a low income community. I was teaching them compassionate communication. And there's very structured steps, but then even before that, before I went into the theory, which is probably what I would do before, maybe have some activities within the session, but it was more like, how do I really get them to connect even before we
Mm.
start talking about this? And
Mm.
it was just asking myself, how can I love these people?
Yeah.
And so like, what would Robert do?
Mm.
Robert doing, and he had shared that last time that one of the things that he wanted to that he would do is ask how he can love us, and it has become such a powerful question
Mm.
because in this brain dominated society we forget about the heart. And I think pro-social, in a very quiet way, is about bringing your heart back into what you're doing
Mm.
and the way we interact with others. It might sound very romantic, so we gotta be careful how we who we say this
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it might be something that some people are not really ready to understand.
Mm.
But yeah, it's about bringing the heart back and that connection with others. And the session was great. And I was telling Robert within the first 5-10 minutes, the moms were crying, and I didn't do anything. But it was just very moving to see how people are just not used to
Mm.
being loved that way and being asked questions that are so simple, like why are you here? And
Mm.
be present to yourself with love and compassion. And so it's that's kind of what I'm taking from what you're saying, Robert, just
Mm.
how can we add compassion back into what we're sharing with others.
Yeah, exactly. When we can hold ourselves here like this and know that what you're holding is beautiful. I mean, you do it now and on your heart. So there's a beating heart, and a soul in there. And it is beautiful. We've just got to perceive that, like perceive the reality of that, because it is. We're incredibly powerful and with massive gifts to give. And so that's their opportunity to actually unearth those gifts that are actually already in us. hence the positive reinforcement. And our need to be sensitive to that, to actually perceive that gift in another, even in the presence of what might be abhorrent to us. Takes a huge amount of courage. So I wanted to kind of go to this because it's I think we just scratched the surface of this work in these little exercises. But we can open the door into this realm. I mean, Marcelo, I invited you to say something before, and then maybe we can segue into a round. It's like, what are we leaving with today? Marcelo.
Yeah, I think thanks, Robert. I think this for me, in my experience, is space of emergence and comes, and also you pay attention and what's going on now, and you can lose some sort of control
Mm,
in all the things we understand as planning. So in the experience we've got during 2 years in Latin America doing pro-social
yeah.
journey of the heart was that space
Mm,
of becoming emergence that's based on the idea of living control. And this is not easy
mm,
because you need to trust a lot in the process and people. And this, for me, this is a expression of love, deep love, when you actually, when you trust in because everything is going to be all right when you are in presence and in connection with love. So
yeah.
it's going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, one day we'll share the participatory videos that we made of this work in Latin America. It's very powerful. Yeah. But I'd love to do a round now as we kind of wind up our time together. Maybe Pacifica, do you want to kickstart us?
Yeah, just sharing how we're leaving this space.
Yeah, how are we leaving? Yeah, and maybe yeah, how you're leaving, key takeaways, maybe. What's inspiring you?
I think there's a Maori phrase, kanohi kite kanohi, like seeing someone eye to eye, and just this place of like pro-social conversations, getting to a place of really seeing someone who they are, despite what's coming up for you, your reactions to them, and even that just as an expression of love. Like how rare is that when someone takes the time to really see us where we're at in the moment,
Mm,
and just reflecting on like, that as like a, kind of this reflective phrase to come back to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to pick the next person?
Please, yeah.
Pamela, you're next to me in my screen. What do you got?
There's the last couple of sessions, and tonight is no different. I always walk away feeling so fulfilled. Um, the idea that at the core, this is about, I wrote down um, protecting the dignity of people and loving them, especially in the moments when they are not at their best, when they're hurting, when they're not showing up, loving me back. Uh, but giving it to them anyway and creating that space is so, so powerful.
Mm,
So thank you.
yeah.
Uh, Andrea.
So I'm not going to say words. I'm just going to say what I live with. I live with this. Thank you, Robert, for that. Marcelo.
Mm,
Thanks, Robert, for bringing that space for us. And
and we are free to give this gift all the time.
yeah,
That's the freedom when you become psychologically flexible. You are free to choose to love radically. Mm.
and Alex.
I'm excited about next session. I was reflecting when we were just talking about compassion, about like actually like how self-compassion flows onto compassion towards other people. Like where we've been going through some stress with housing at the moment, my husband and I, and very, very tired. I'm feeling very, very tired at the moment. And it was very hard to get up for this session. Um, and I've decided to take the week off work just to deal with it. Because I don't think I can show up
Mm.
fully for my colleagues and my clients. And yeah, so I guess it's just, yeah, I think me thinking about how that applies to what I'm going through at the moment. And you can't pour from an empty cup, essentially.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that more at the next session.
yeah, totally. I'm with you there, Alex. Which we're our house is in boxes right now because we're moving to Melbourne, and I've been up since 4 a.m. Zooming with folk in Africa and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I might come and
Gosh.
hang out with you for a while, I think. Get a bit of
Yeah.
empathy. Yeah.
I'll pass on to Josh. I don't think you've gone yet.
Thanks, Alex. I'm energized by all this and looking forward to next week. I mean, it's just really a huge impact to be present with all of you focused on these ideas. That's just a huge thing as in this world of distraction. Just being present this whole time is a huge act all around. So thank you all.
Mm. Annika, final words.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of connection to all of you and trust. And it's a space where we all can try out things. And I think this is, for me, it's so valuable to get honest feedback, and to tweak things around. I really like that. Um, yeah, and for me, it's a very special group experience where there's so much trust and compassion, and yeah,
Mm.
I really like that. And yeah, I'm also feeling tired, and
Yeah, yeah.
realize that I'm, yeah, capacity is near limit, I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah. Yeah, you can sense it. I mean, it's with yeah, like Annika, your devotion to this is off the chart. Like it's what 1:30 in the morning now where you are?
Hmm.
Yeah, just amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing. So thank you, dear friend, for showing up for this. You put yourself on the most extraordinary learning curve. It's just unbelievable. Listen, thank you, everybody. Please go well till next week. Josh, do you want to stay on and we'll find a time? And Annika, if you want to debrief, I'm happy to hang around for a bit. Otherwise, go to bed and I'll catch you next week.